And right behind my truck walks this thing. And it's about 8 feet tall, very skinny. Had kind of an oval-shaped head, about a foot long neck, very long arms, very long legs. It looked like an insect. It looked like an upright insect walking on 2 feet. And its head on this long, freakish neck turns 90 degrees and looks right at me. And I'm looking at it, and it's looking at me, and I'm thinking, this is it. I'm dead.
You had an experience when you were a child with your grandmother, the Easter Bunny.
That was bizarre. I sat on that for almost 65 years. And I told my grandmother, I told my parents, none of us could make any sense out of it. And I didn't say anything because it obviously probably wasn't a spirit. I didn't know what it was until 2 years ago. But anyway, I was probably about 5, 6 years old or something. I lived on the farm. Again, no plumbing. We had chickens running in the yard, and across the gravel road, we had cows, and out in the middle of nowhere, me and a 70-year-old woman, and living together, and beautiful southern Ohio. And one day, it was probably, 8, 9 o'clock or something in the morning, and I'm on the front porch and on the swing, and up towards me from the side of the house is an Easter bunny. Or a stuffed bunny. I guess an Easter bunny would have a basket of eggs. It was just, it's a stuffed bunny. I call it an Easter bunny. And, it looked like a stuffed toy bunny. It wasn't animated. It was like floating in the air. And it was kind of goofy. It was soiled, and it had a yellow ribbon, some of the tied a bow, and it was like half undone and hanging off to one side. And the bunny had obviously long since, many times they've been played with. And it's floating in the air, and it's moving like someone would, hold a toy in front of a child or a pet and say, "Ooh, here comes the bunny. Here he comes waddling." It was moving like that, real goofy, and kind of tilt off to one side. And I'm looking at it and thinking, what the heck is this? What's this bunny floating in the air? Just before I saw it, all the chickens in the yard, we had banties and we had white rocks, and they took off. And I've never seen a run like that. They took off. Some ran under the house. Some ran into the cornfield right next to us. Some ran out into the road, into the pasture where the cattle was. We would get snakes in the yard, and the chickens would go up and peck it to death. And once we had like a feral dog come up and kind of attack me, the chickens went up and attacked the dog. Chickens aren't chicken, but something scared me, including the rooster. They left me high and dry. And then just at about that time, that's when I saw the Easter bunny coming up towards me. So that scared me. The bunny didn't scare me, that the chickens ran and hid. I thought, I'm in trouble. So as the bunny comes up, and I'm getting close to the side of the porch, and I heard it talking. The mouth didn't move at all. It was like a separate voice saying, "I'm in trouble. Can you help me? If you could help me go, do something, afterwards we can go play. We'll have some great adventures. We'll have a good time. Come with me. Come on. It's not that far. Help me do what I need to do. And then you and I will be friends, and we'll play, and we'll have a really good time." And I might have gone with it had the chickens not freaked out. And I'm a farm boy, and I just, no, I'm not going.
No
I kept
way.
No, not going to go. He said, come on. It'll be fun. You and I will be friends. We can play. We can be pals. I'm out there in the middle of nowhere. I had no friends.
What did his voice sound like?
An adult male is what it sounded like.
And
I don't know if I heard it with my ears or if I heard it with my mind. I don't recall. It was clear, and it was English. There was no accent, but it sounded like an older male. And I kept saying, no, I won't. I'm not going to go with you. And finally it stopped kind of doing this little dance thing and started backing up and going backwards, still facing me. And as I was backing up, it was going around the side of the house. And from the porch, I couldn't see it anymore. So I grabbed onto the side of the house and I swung over the side of the porch so I could see what's it doing. And it had turned around. And prior to that, it was just a stuffed bunny floating in the air. When I saw it after it turned around, it was the back of a stuffed bunny, facing the other way. And it looked like a little dinosaur, about 2.5 feet tall, walking on the ground on all fours with a long tail with little spikes going down its back, down to the tail. The tail was dragging on the ground. And I couldn't see the head of the dinosaur. It looks like its snout was stuck in the back of the stuffed bunny. Like that was what was doing this,
Whoa.
making it talk. And I watched it walk around the side of the house and then around the corner. And I ran in and I got my grandmother and I said, "Oh my God," I told her what happened real quick. Well, she's grabbing a gun. We had guns all over the house. We're out in the middle of nowhere. That's what you do. And grabbing a gun and tore out the front door. She noticed all the chickens were gone too. And around the side of the house, and she was gone for several minutes. And I thought, "Oh my God, it's got her." So I thought, should I get a gun and go save her? I didn't know what to do. And then pretty soon she comes around the side of the house and she just said to me very sternly, she says, "If anything, man or anything else tries to get you to go with it, you don't go with it." I said, "Well, yes, I'm smart enough to know that." I don't know if she saw something and maybe didn't say anything to not freak me out. Or did she not? But for days, I mean, both of us are taking turns and we're looking out the windows all through the house. I stayed in the house for a couple of days. I was afraid to go out.
Oh,
And it
yeah.
was about, 30, 45, an hour later or so before the chickens even started coming back. They were freaked out like that much. And for like the rest of the day, they don't cluck as much and they're just kind of nervous. They
Whoa.
saw something. So all of my life, my only shared witness with the experience was a flock of chickens. And I thought about this so much. It's like, what on earth was it? It wasn't a ghost. It wasn't a spirit. I had no idea what it was. And, so it's been quite a mystery. And I was afraid to share it with many people because it just sounds so crazy to have that happen. And finally, in September of 2022, I finally retired. And I had worked weekends for years and years and years because I like to go camping during the week. So I gave up weekends, so I could camp. And I missed going to all kinds of seminars and workshops and things. And that's kind of sad. Maybe I shouldn't have done that. But I finally, about a month after I retired, I went to my very first UFO convention. Never been to one before. And it was interesting. They had a session there called the Experiencers meeting, and they had it every morning. And people go in and they tell their stories. They tell things that happened to them. And I was going to tell my experience. I'd seen the Phoenix Lights in 1997, but this one man stood up. Ended up he was from Ohio too, and he told my story almost verbatim
No
as to what
way.
happened to him. It was, and it was definitely the Easter Bunny. He had a basket. His was animated like a cartoon,
But also a
and
bunny?
but it was a bunny, an Easter bunny with a basket,
What the heck?
and came up to him, and he was not when he was a child. It was probably about 75 miles from where I lived, and told the exact same thing. He wouldn't go with it. He wouldn't go with it. And it left. And after he told his story, I couldn't wait to go talk to him. The next person that stood up said, "My God, the same thing happened to me." And I was like, "Oh my gosh." And it was the same thing. It was animated like a cartoon. And the Easter Bunny came up to him and tried to get him to go away with it. And he wouldn't do it. And it was kind of neat. So I had changed, what I was going to say, and I just forced myself to be the next person. I said the same thing happened to me. So we all three later on got together and shared our stories. And it was interesting. They were younger than I was and had opportunity for television. So they watched a lot of cartoons. This happened to me probably about 1959. And we were out in the middle of nowhere, and maybe now and then we could get one channel. So I hadn't watched cartoons. I wasn't exposed to cartoons. They saw cartoons. It took on the form of cartoons to these two men because cartoons were common when they were a child. And we lived out in the middle of nowhere. People would drive up and leave sacks of stuff for us, sacks of food and toys and clothes. It was, this little boy and this old woman, and they leave them on the side of the road and then they tear off, afraid of us. I'm sure we looked scary. And now and then the only toys I got were used and dusty and dirty. And it wasn't until I started thinking about all of this, I wonder that's why it appeared as a dirty, worn, kind of goofy little used toy, because that's what a poor kid with no shoes living out in the middle of nowhere would find normal.
It was relatable. Yeah.
Yes, I
It
can
came through
relate.
your own, like your mind's landscape.
Yeah,
So you could relate to it. And then they watched cartoons. So that makes sense.
yeah. So it's like, oh my God, I can't tell. It was like a weight lifted off my shoulder to run into these two guys. I was like, oh my gosh, this is so wonderful. So, about that time, I discovered Reddit, and I got on Reddit and I told my story there. I got, oh my God, over 200 replies. And since then, I've communicated with 36 people that have almost exactly the same thing happened to them when they were children, but it was different characters. Several, it was the Easter Bunny. A couple, it was Santa Claus. A couple, it was the Ninja Turtles. One guy had Captain Crunch, but it was the same story over and over and over again. They came up to them and tried to get them to go away with them. And then somebody told me about this. Steven Spielberg did a TV movie called Taken in 2002. And there's some of the clips are on YouTube. You can find it for free. And this animated squirrel comes up to a little boy and does the same thing. Come on, we'll have a great time. And the kid goes with him in the movie, and they go into this little hollow tree where the squirrel lives. And then the tree turns into a rocket ship and off they fly. It's like, oh my God.
Whoa.
But it was weird of these 36 people and then the two guys that I talked to at the UFO convention. None of them went with them. And then finally I heard from this woman, and she was the only one that did go with him. And it was Santa Claus. And she hadn't heard my story. She hadn't heard all of it. She knew that I had a near abduction too. And Santa would come in a sleigh and it would pick her up. And instead of hopping in the sleigh like where Santa and the elves would, there was like a hatch in the back of the sleigh, and she would have to crawl through that. And it would take her to the North Pole, which didn't sound much like the North Pole. And she had absolutely horrible experiences. And it sounds like a lot of
Oh,
medical
no.
examination, a lot of pain. This woman is still traumatized after all these years. But without knowing my story, she said once when she was getting into the sleigh with Santa's outfit, his red furry outfit, split open, and out flowed what looked like a dinosaur's tail with the spikes on it. Oh my God, I'm getting goosebumps.
Dave, how many of these experiences had the dinosaur tail? Did most of them have the same?
Mm-mm. Just she and I so far that I know of. I don't know if the others saw it turn around or not, but she saw exactly what I saw without hearing my story. She didn't know that I had seen that. So I had heard, I never asked anybody because I didn't want to, lead in any information. I just had them share their story with me. And I thought someone needs to interview every single one of them Because this is going on all over. A lot of these were in Canada, the United States, but a lot of these stories were also from other countries. And it's the same thing over and over and over. Something is taking on the form of something that a child would trust and go with. And for whatever reason, it needs the child's permission. Now, what's that about? Why does, I mean, these things could probably easily have grabbed us and pulled us away, but they needed our permission. And when they didn't get it, they left. At
It
least they left
feels
that.
there's like this whole lore about the reptilians living underground, right? Like this whole species of aliens that are forced to live underground, and that everything is free will, and it's kind of like inviting the vampire into your home, right? So I don't know. It's such a mystery. It's fascinating that this is. I had not heard that before about children getting
What
abducted like that.
what a relief. I had neither. I had no idea. Because I haven't attended these things and I really didn't look into it. I really wasn't into it that much. I'm more into spirit, the spirit and wonderful, loving, marvelous experiences. But since I saw the Phoenix Lights, I started getting a little more curious about the physical craft and things. But there's so many. There's so many that are having this experience. And what is it? And there's so many similarities. I'm so glad that I retired when I retired because I got to go to this convention and hear these people. It's, I don't know, something's going on. And I wonder, all except for that one woman when she was a little girl went with him. Nobody else went with him. And, they didn't mention having another, near abduction or whatever. What do they want? I don't know. But I sat on this now for over 60 years. So I was 60. So I was 68 when I heard about this. So I sat on this for like 63, 64 years and I played it in my mind again and again and again. Right. Think, what on earth was this? And somebody else told, and then now dozens of people have told my story. I still don't know what it is, but it's happening all over. And it might be happening tonight to somebody. I mean, who knows? Who knows what they want? I don't know. I don't know. I don't think it was spirit. Just because something's, you can't see something doesn't mean it's of spirit. And I hear a lot of people confusing that. The unseen with being spirit. Unseen can be just unseen. Spirit's got its own vibration. There's life to it. There's energy. You can feel that. It's something totally different with these things.
Yeah, some sort of entity, some dark, low vibrational entity. Who knows? But you did have an experience, a weird experience out in the desert where there were like these trucks that showed up and you saw this being. Do you mind sharing that?
Sure, sure. And again, I worked weekends for decades. I loved to camp. I was raised on a farm. So, being out in the middle of nowhere is nothing to me. So, I would work, would have 12-hour shifts. So I could work Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and then have Monday through Thursday off. And it was great to go camping because everybody else is at work. So that was perfect for me. And being in Arizona in the desert, camp out in the desert, especially in the winter time. And then in summer, when it's too hot, just run up to the Arizona mountains and it's nice and cool. And I would camp up there. So there's this one place out in the southwest part of the United States. And I had been there before, in that area. And I went camping. The weather was absolutely beautiful. And I'm in my truck and it was about 2 a.m. and there was a full moon, very bright moon, and it was low, maybe about 2 o'clock, low and gorgeous. It was so bright I could read. So nice. And because I work night shift, I'm kind of up nights anyway, even on my days off and even camping. It was kind of hard to sleep during the daytime, but I'm up a lot. And behind my truck, about 4 feet behind my truck. So I'm looking south. The moon's in the sky, very low, very bright. And right behind my truck walks this thing. And it's about 8 feet tall, very skinny. Had kind of an oval shaped head, about a foot long neck, very long arms, very long legs. It looked like an insect. It looked like an upright insect walking on 2 feet. Um, and from its jaw had a tube that hung down about 4 feet, almost came to a point, and it was very close to its abdomen. And it's walking like it's walking in a swimming pool with water, very much resistance, struggling to walk, or like it's sick, or like it's wounded. And it's every step is a struggle to move. And it gets right behind my truck, about 4 feet. So I'm probably about 8 feet from it. And it stops. The moon's behind it. So I'm seeing it mostly in silhouette. And its head on this long, freakish neck, it barely moves its shoulder, but this head turns 90 degrees and looks right at me. And I'm looking at it and it's looking at me and I'm thinking, this is it. I'm dead. What the heck is this? And it stares at me. I'm staring at it probably 10, 15 seconds or something. It seemed like an hour. And then it turned its head back and continued walking, struggling every single step. And I walked out of view. I couldn't see it all anymore. And I thought, oh, it's gone. But then I scared myself thinking about the old science fiction movies. Just when you think everything's fine, that's when the hand reaches out and grabs you.
Ugh.
And then I got to thinking, it looked like it was hungry and had this huge tube. And I thought, oh my God, it's going to come up and stick the tube in me and drain me out of blood. I mean, this is all
Terrifying.
stuff going through my mind.
Absolutely. I'd have
That was
been
me
out of there.
scared. Yeah, so that's it. So I got in the truck and took off. And my camping equipment's flying out the back of the truck. I didn't care. I'm flying. And I'm out in the middle of nowhere. I mean, there's no one for probably easily 20 miles or more. And it wasn't even a dirt road. It was like a dust road. And during the daytime, it's kind of pretty. It's flat and it's just desert and desolate. But at night, when there's these things walking around, who knows how many more there were. So I finally get to a main road and I take off and I just decide I'm just going right on home. And I swore I was never going to go back. Well, I went back. It was a couple months later. It's like, I got to go back. I just got to go back. But I went back and it was daytime. I'm not doing this again in the middle of the night. And I've been camping for 50 years, and that was the last time I went camping. I have not camped since that night. And that was this is about 2015.
So what pulled you back? What made you want to go
I
back?
just knew I had to go. I just knew. I don't know, for whatever reason, I had to go. I had to go. I had to go feel, or look or whatever. And I went back to the spot. I'd been there. And then there was, some of my stuff was still kind of around. So I knew exactly where the spot was anyway, but that validated, where I was. And I looked around and, it was just desert and it was nice. It was a beautiful day and I didn't see anything weird. And, if there was any tracks, they were long gone by the time I finally ended up going back there. So, yeah, I thought, well, it's a nice day. I'm out here. Everything's okay. I might as well go for a little hike. So I drove down the dirt road about 2 more miles down the other way. Found a nice little place to stop, and this would be a good place to walk around. And as I get out of my truck, I'm hearing all this digging sound. And it sounded like machinery. It sounded like diesel engines and backhoes and not pickup trucks, dump trucks and major machinery, like at least 15 of them digging. And it was loud and the beep, 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 beep when something's going backwards. And I'm looking around and there's absolutely nothing. There's no trucks. There's no other people. There's nothing for this sound to come from. And actually I got on my truck and drove farther down the road thinking, well, where's all this coming from? And I saw nothing. I went back to the same place and there I could hear it. And it just kind of hit me. I wonder, could it be underground? So I get on my hands and knees and I put my ear to the ground and it was coming from underground. it wasn't above ground. It was all underground. I'm thinking, oh my God, this is weird. I wonder what's going on underground out here in the middle of nowhere. This doesn't make sense. And then I stand up. And so I'm standing up. It's probably been 45 to 60 seconds from when I had been standing there and looking in front of me, and there was nothing there. When I stood up, there was two huge white pickup trucks not too far from me facing me, and they weren't there less than a minute before. And now they're there. And they were bizarrely big. I don't know what make they were. I'm thinking of a Tundra, but they were bigger than that. And they were a bizarre white. I've never seen a white like that. It was almost luminescent. And they were shiny. And it was so shiny, the sun was reflecting off of them, and it almost hurt. And their wheels were absolutely black. There was no dirt on it. And you go out in the desert in 1 minute, you're covered in dust. So I started getting concerned. I thought, maybe I'm not supposed to be here. Maybe I shouldn't have heard what I'm hearing. And maybe they saw me now listening to the ground, and they know I know something's going on underground. So I decided I probably better get out of there. So I turn around to get into my truck to leave. And then behind me, there's two more of them, two more of the same kind of trucks. And they weren't there minutes before. Pointing right towards me, sitting in the desert, huge, big, white trucks, pickup trucks. And the windshield is onyx black, totally black. And I can't see if there's anybody in there or not. So I just try to be nonchalant, and I get in my truck and back up and head back towards the biggest road that was there. And I drive and I drive and I drive and I drive and I drive. It's quite a drive. And I keep looking, and they're not following me. And I feel, this is it. I'm getting out of here. I'm not coming back at all. So I finally get to the nearest road, and I can turn right to the north. I can turn left to the south. And there's right where I was about to turn, there's a truck facing north and a truck facing south. The exact same trucks that I had seen just behind. There's two more. So whichever way I turn, there's going to be a truck either pull out in front of me and block me, or to be right behind me and chase. I'm thinking, oh my God, what am I going to do? So, I just kind of, I'm just going to go south. It would take me closer to where I needed to be for some safety. There was a community not too far away from there. So as I go down the road, the car that was facing south, right behind me, as soon as I pass it, it's taking off. And the other truck turns around and follows also. So I'm going down a two-lane road. I was 90 miles an hour, and the truck behind me was right on my bumper. I thought, should I put on the brakes? And, I thought, well, that's going to be a wreck. And then the other truck is trying to pass me. And so I'm swerving between two lanes, trying to keep the truck behind me, the one on trying to pass me from passing me, because I figured they're going to try to run me off the road. So I'm going like this. And I don't know what kind of bugs were out there. It's like crickets, and I'm hitting crickets, and they're smashing all over my windshield. I noticed that the truck behind me isn't hitting any bugs. And I keep looking, I keep checking, because I could turn around and see the one that kept trying to pass me. And it would come up, and I would swerve in front of it. It didn't have any bugs on its windshield either. My windshield was hitting bugs all over. It was just speckled with like yellow guts and stuff. Theirs didn't have a spot on it. It was like luminescent, glowing, a bizarre white paint. The windshield, absolutely, totally black. The tires didn't have any dirt on them. They were absolutely black. I didn't notice any noise. You would hear like a whir, the engine. I didn't notice it. Of course, I was scared. But I did notice, why aren't they hitting bugs, but I am? And, I keep driving and driving, probably about 10 miles or so. There was a veer off to what looked like almost an abandoned house. I don't know if it was or wasn't. And I thought, maybe if I go in there, they'll think that's where I live and I got friends there. and it was a shot. And so I did. I took the exit. And at the same time, both trucks slowed down exactly at the same time, went parallel, made a U-turn, and went back. And it's just, I got my breath. I drove on home. I kept thinking, when I get home, there's going to be a truck there, or there's going to be a bullet, flying through the air, and this is it. I'm going to die. And there was nothing. Not that I know of, anybody was watching me. They would have had my license plate. I don't know what it was. It was bizarre. It looked like a truck, but then it didn't look like a truck. And
what do you think it was?
I told this to several people that are much more into UFOs than I am. And they're talking about a thing called a screen image that non-human whatever can cast an image around something that you think you're seeing, but it's not it. That sometimes that there's craft that they will put an image around to look like a truck. I don't know if it was that or not, but they didn't hit any bugs. Was there really something there? And I thought it was a truck, or was there something that took on the form of a truck? Or did they have some sort of a cloaking device around a truck that the bugs and the dust wouldn't hit their tires? And it would come up trying to pass me, and I could see the tires, brand new, incredibly thick tires, not a bit of dirt on them. And going on the road, it's going to pick up dust. There was nothing. It was beyond showroom clean.
Wow.
So it's a total of 6 trucks. And I don't know. I thought about it, and I just kind of wonder, why are they chasing me when about 2 miles down the road, before that, I see this 8-foot ant-looking insect creature walking around. Why aren't they chasing it? What's a little Nurse David?
It was probably all the same thing. It could have been some black budget government program.
Right. People have asked about it, and I've kept the locations. I didn't disclose it because I thought, what if it's national defense? And with everything going on with China and Russia, and, maybe we really need some missiles or something to defend the United States. Maybe they're building that underground. But then I got to thinking, what's this ant creature or insect or mantis or whatever it was around there? Could it be human and non-human? Is it government? Is it for national defense? They could have taken me out at any time, and I would never be seen again out there. They could have made me and my truck disappear, and no one would have known for the better. But they let me go. I don't know if they tried to kill me and I got away, or if they just tried to scare me, which worked. And so I've just not disclosed the area. I just didn't want a bunch of like YouTubers going out there with beer and taking selfies. and if it is for national defense, they totally 100% need their secrecy. It might save the whole country. Something's going on out there.
Something's going on.
People keep saying, look to the skies, look to the skies. I'm thinking you need to look underneath where you're standing. I think more is going on underground than we definitely think. I know something's going on out there. Something. Yeah. I don't know what. I've never been back. I won't even go close to it. I'll drive 50 miles out of my way, not even to go close out there.
That's terrifying.
I'm so grateful that they didn't take me out. But what was it? I don't know.
Wow.
Is it human, alien? Is it human? Is it all alien? I don't know. That was scary. Yeah. So, and then I saw the Phoenix Lights. I'm going to be on a Netflix show coming up pretty soon on the Phoenix Lights, and we'll see how well it turns out. I had a big stroke in December. That was 4 months ago. So they filmed me about a month after, and when I had the stroke, I fell and I knocked 3 teeth out, and I was paralyzed in an ICU and all this stuff.
My goodness.
And I used my meditation to heal myself. that's a great, sometime maybe we can go into that. But, it was either a show up for this interview or forever hold your peace. So I thought, well, we'll see what happens. I'm still slurring my speech. I'm still seeing a physical therapist at the time and a speech therapist. My dentist hadn't fixed my teeth yet. And I'm sliding over when they're interviewing me. So we'll see. I hope they can put it together that I don't look like a drunk. I'm kind of nervous about seeing that one. But 1997, March 13th, and I was doing hospice in Mesa, Arizona. I lived in Phoenix, Arizona, so it's quite a drive down the about 25 miles to get home. The nurse was late coming in to cover me, so I had to stay just a little bit late that night, and that put me at the absolute best place I could be to see the Phoenix lights. So I'm heading down Highway I-60 between Mesa and Phoenix. And at the time, it was under construction for like 10 years. They would widen it, then they'd widen it again, then widen it again. It just took forever. And at this point, there was no pavement. It was just all dirt on the freeway. And other people with some sense went on the side streets. I don't know why I went down the freeway. And every time we'd come to an underpass, I had to get off the freeway and go over the overpass and then get back down on the freeway, go a mile. Here's another big street and overpass. So I'd be going under the overpass normally. I had to get up and go over the overpass and then get back down on the freeway every single time. So I was probably about in Tempe. I don't remember the exact exit because everything was torn up. And there was very few people on the freeway. And I'm going up over this overpass, and then there was this huge mound of construction dirt. And probably someone said probably I was supposed to go around it, but for whatever reason, I did a 12-hour shift and I'm wanting to get home. I ended up going up on top of the mound of construction dirt. So I'm way up in the air. In fact, the houses that would have been off to the right, I could look down and see the rooftops. And a freeway street light is so much taller than like a neighborhood street light. And I was right by one of them. It was right behind my right shoulder. And it was maybe 2 feet over my head, a little bit farther behind me. So I was way elevated in the air. And I'm on the top of the mound of construction dirt, and I had my brights on. And as I'm looking out of my windshield, here's this huge boomerang-shaped thing floating in the air. And it was pretty darn low. Oh, you can't see me. It was pretty darn low. Of course, I'm way up, about street light high elevation, and it's coming towards me. So I slammed on my brakes and jump out of my truck, still have my brights on. I got the street light right behind my right shoulder. I'm getting out and standing on this pile of dirt, and I'm watching this coming closer and closer and closer to me. It looked like it was pouring lava, about 5 or 6 streams of liquid fire dripping out of it as it was coming towards me. And it was just floating. It was just gently floating. It wasn't going that fast. And as it came towards me, I focused on the nearest light because I got to thinking this stuff looks very, very hot. It was like an orange crush orange liquid fire, like thick lava, like a lava lamp, but upside down. And there were circles at the bottom of the craft, and the circles were openings. It wasn't like a flat light bulb. And out of each one of them was flowing this lava stuff. And it was thick. And as it would drip down, it would kind of stretch out. And where it stretched, it would go from orange to a yellow. And then it would kind of slow down to a huge drip, stop, and then the drip would go back up. And a couple more streams of it was coming down. So it was constant streams of what looked like lava coming down, stopping, and going back up, and going back down, and then going back up. And it didn't look like it was being sucked back up. It looked like it fell up. So if you were boiling water and the water flies out of the pan, it goes so high and then falls back down in the pan. That's what it looked like, but much slower and upside down. It was flowing down and then going back up inside the tube. And I was concerned because it looked so hot. There was this orange glow all around me. And I thought, I'm going to get burned. And I was wondering, should I get back in the truck? Should I get behind the truck? Is there going to be gas? And,
Mhm.
is the gas tank going to blow up? I was concerned about it, but it was coming. And finally I realized I'm not feeling any heat at all. I'm not hearing any sound. It's not blowing any dust in my face. I'm not tingling. There was no sensation whatsoever. And I was just transfixed as to how massive this craft was and how silent it was. And as it came towards me, we were so close. I didn't even have to look up to see the very tip of the left wing, which went right over my head. I would have to look straight up, and I saw that. And it was rounded horizontally, and it was rounded vertically. I couldn't really see up the sides. But with the street light on and with my bright lights of my truck on, I could clearly see the whole bottom of the craft, and it was like a gunmetal gray. It was about 20% reflective, about 80% matte, and it had oval indentations like a thumbprint. Thousands and thousands and thousands of them from the wing going as far as I could see towards the middle of the craft. And finally, because the craft was so big, I couldn't see any more of the indentations. But the light from my truck and from the street light, and also the light from this glowing lava dripping down, it left like shadows. I could see shadows, and there was clearly indentations all over the bottom. And I realized it wasn't going to burn me, so I just stood there and stared and just watched. It just flowed right over my head. And it was so close, I felt completely confident that I could hit it with a rock. And briefly, I thought, well, there's rocks all over the place. I'm standing on a construction site. I almost picked one up, and I thought, I wonder what it's going to sound like. Is it paper? Is it going to tear?
Right.
Is it ping? And I almost did it. And then I just thought, you know what? There might be consequences. Let's not do this.
Probably a good
Here's little
idea.
paper and a mile wide craft. Let's not start a fight. So I just stood there and just watched it. And like that, just going right over my head. And right behind it, it was like 6 trails of a rainbow like mist, layers of rainbow colors going from wide down to a little point like a flag, waving like a fishtail right
Whoa.
behind it. And it would dissipate into the air. And I thought, well, I hope this isn't a gas or something, but I didn't
Right.
feel any like droplets on my face. I didn't smell anything. And then for days after this, I would look in the mirror to see if I was, had radiation burns or anything like that, or singed hair. I had no negative effects whatsoever. And as this colorful light went out of sight or went over my head, I had this overwhelming feeling of gratitude. I felt so much love, so much respect, so happy. It was like the best friends you've ever had in your entire life just drove by to, let you know they loved you. I didn't hear anything, but that's what I felt. It was, it was so overwhelming. I just started crying, and I cried for 10 minutes as it flew farther south and went down to Chandler, Arizona and out of sight. I just stood there bawling my eyes out, and I kept saying,
Whoa.
thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. I love you too. Oh, it was overwhelming. And that feeling of gratitude, and that's been now 27 years, just a couple of weeks ago. And it just has stayed with me the whole time. Whatever that was, I don't know. And I've talked to other people that have
Right.
seen the Phoenix Lights. We have an annual event here in Arizona commemorating it. And I just spoke at it a couple weeks ago, and there was a couple other witnesses that saw it. Nobody had a negative um, out, outcome from that. No one was frightened. No one was hurt. No one was damaged. Everybody had a positive outcome, but I had this incredible, emotional, wonderful outpouring of peace and love and happiness that has just stayed with me. It stayed with me now for 27 years. It's been consistent. So I always wondered, did the craft do something to me or did I do something to myself? I don't know. I don't know who was in it. I don't know who had their hand on the steering wheel. I don't know who had their foot on the pedal. I don't know any of that. I just know what I saw and I know what I felt. And again, I'm a feeling person. And it was just the most warm, loving, fabulous feeling like that I've got from anything ever in my entire life. I don't know. I don't know what it was.
Have you heard any other experiencers having the same feeling that you did?
None. None. Some thought it was cool. It's made a lot of people, it's changed their viewpoint of themselves in the universe. Nobody had a bad effect from it, but I haven't heard anybody that was filled with this incredibly strong feeling of gratitude and gratefulness and camaraderie with whoever was in there. I mean, it's like my blood and soul. It's like my other half of me was in there. And I don't know what it was. I don't know. And I've not had any contact or anything like that since then that I know of. It was it was an incredible spiritual experience for me. And it's a shame because when I bring this up, like on UFO sites, they discredit me because of that. And,
Really?
wow, yeah, you should have took a picture and you should have,
Well,
measured
so
this,
many
measured
people
that.
saw it. How many people saw the craft? Because they saw it all the way from Vegas to Phoenix, right?
And down into Mexico.
And down
Yeah.
into Mexico. Do you know
Yeah.
about like a number of how many people
I,
saw it?
I heard 8,000. Now, not every, and I don't know if they're just guessing because still, I mean, just a couple of weeks ago, people are coming forward that haven't spoken in 27 years. We had some, I just met some other people. No one else that I know of saw the lava coming down. But about a month ago, I talked to a guy, and I've never talked to him before. He saw it probably about 4 minutes before I did. He was farther north, and he was right above the canister, the opening in the craft. And he said when he looked up, it looked like lava was swirling around, almost like a cotton candy machine. The stuff kind of swirls
Oh.
around, but it was still up deep in the opening, so it hadn't poured down yet. I saw it pouring down. No one else I've ever talked to saw it pouring down. But about a year ago, I talked to a pilot in Canada. He was in the Canadian Air Force in 1997. He's now a private pilot in Canada and cannot come forward with his story. But he said on that very same night, March 13th, 1997, he saw the same craft in Canada and the lava was flowing down and going back up. I thought,
Oh,
oh my
wow.
God. So what's that? I've only had one other person describe the colorful light. And he actually had a computer generated graphic of it. And it's exactly what I saw. And he had a wonderful feeling too from it. Unfortunately, he's deceased now. But
Oh.
I can send you the link to the graphic if you want to add
Yeah,
that.
can you
It's on
please?
the
Yeah.
news.
I would like to
And
see that.
he saw the lights different than I did, but he saw the orange yellow light swirling around. But he was looking up, 100% looking up. I'm looking sideways. So to see the bottom of the craft, I didn't even have to lift my head, except to see the tip, which went right over my head. I guessed the craft to be about a mile wide from wingtip to wingtip. And to see the whole craft, I just had to lift my eyes. I didn't even have to lift my head. So I'm seeing it completely horizontally. Everybody else is seeing it on top of them. So I had a completely different viewpoint. I don't know. I don't know what
Wow.
it was. I don't know. It was absolutely a marvelous, amazing experience. And that was life changing for me.
I can
Totally
imagine.
electric. Yeah.
There were no windows or like anything that you could see inside the craft besides those little openings.
I couldn't see the side. I could only see
Yeah.
the bottom from my viewpoint. And as it went off, it was dark. I couldn't tell how tall it was, really. It
Wow.
seemed to blot out the stars above it as it disappeared. But it was early in the evening. There wasn't that many stars out that much. And I could see it coming towards me very clearly because the ambient light of Phoenix, kind of lights the sky. And it was obviously a boomerang shape. And so many other people saw it as a very pointed V with very pointed corners. And the corner went right over my head. If the craft had fallen, I could take like 2 steps and I could have kicked the tip of the left wing. So that's where I was. And it was an obvious boomerang. So did it move? Did it transform in other places? I don't know. I don't know why nobody else saw the lava. It was clear. And the opening, I could see a little bit up in the nearest opening. And inside the opening, maybe up a couple inches, there was like another, like a silver, other ring, just inside the opening. It was like a lining. And from that is where this lava came from. And it was very bright up in the opening of the craft, but the lava itself gave off light. It wasn't like in a lava lamp. It's the bulb in the base of the light, and the lava kind of carries the light through it. This stuff was glowing itself. I was like orange looking. The ground was orange looking, and
Wow.
it colored the indentations in the bottom of the craft. I could see where it was leaving a shadow because people say, oh, it was probably a hologram. Well, holograms don't make shadows. And then my car light and then the street light also were making shadows. And as it went over my head and was going this way, the shadows were moving because the light was now coming at a different angle. So it wasn't a hologram. And people say it was flares. Well, it was a solid piece of machinery. There was no rivets. There was no seams. There was no bolts. I could just clearly see the bottom. I don't know what the sides were like, but the whole bottom was one piece of material. Indentations, thousands and thousands of them. And the only other person I ever talked to about the indentations is Travis Walton. Probably heard of him. He got
Yep. Fire in the
abducted. He
sky.
lives out here. Yeah, yeah. Well, we were talking about it. I think it was last year or something, because he had another sighting, and he saw the rivets, the little indentations too.
Fascinating.
So, but you have to be close to see them, evidently.
Well, yeah,
Or
I
maybe
can
it's because
imagine.
of the lighting. I had incredible lighting going on there. I do not remember driving home. I don't know how I got home. And maybe it's just because I'm in awe
Right.
of, what I saw
For sure.
or whatever. But I stayed up for a bit, looking for, something else. But, I couldn't shut my mouth up at work. Anybody would listen. I was telling about it. And
I would have done the same thing.
yeah,
I wonder
yeah,
what that
that was,
mist was that was following that was trailing. You said it was a mist, so but it wasn't
it
wet.
looked
It
like a
never
mist.
fell on you,
Mm-mm.
but it was
It looked almost
colorful.
like very colorful layers of rainbow colors. It looked like something like a flag you would see at Disneyland. It was very pretty and it was sparkly and bright and cheery. And, I was thinking, what the heck is this? I mean, it looks, um, I don't know.
Did the euphoria hit when the mist hit you? When the mist went
Yes.
over you?
Yes.
So
Not
it
when
was
it came
like,
towards, it
oh
was the
wow,
mist.
what?
That's when it hit. And it was like, oh my God. And I just cried. And usually I cry talking about it. I mean, this is nice to get through this. And that's where some of the other UFO people, they discredit me because I'm crying talking about this experience. It touched me so deeply, more than what I saw. And what I saw was absolutely incredible. It's what I felt. That was changing. And I felt like something in my brain turned about a quarter of an inch. It was almost like a click. It was like something like in me turned, changed. I don't know what, because I was a nice person before, a nice, very spiritual, open to the universe person before. And even afterwards, I mean, all that's the change, but I have had a higher sense of joy and happiness. And I live alone and I catch myself just sitting here smiling. Ever since then, I just sit there and smile for no reason at all. And
Wow.
my friends saw a difference in my personality. They said if I got any nicer, they're going to leave me. And, you know, and being a hospice nurse, you got to be a nice person. But I would have times like, especially on the road, and honk on people you're going too slow.
Yeah.
From that moment on, I've never honked my horn. And I go to the grocery store and I let people go ahead of me. And I'm in traffic. Yeah, go ahead. You can go ahead. Oh, you can go ahead too. I don't care. That's fine.
Wow.
It changed me. There was a change. And again, I was a good person. I'm a better person since then. It changed me for the better. UFO people don't like that. They don't like that.
Well,
And it's like, well,
it's your experience, and no one can take that away from you.
yeah,
It's
it
beautiful.
changed.
Wow.
There was a connection with something or someone or someone's. There was a connection. It,
Wow.
and I don't want to read into it. I don't know where they're
Right.
from. I don't know if they're from Nevada or another planet or under the ground
Right.
or what. I don't know. But that thing was huge. I don't know where you'd store a craft like that.
That's
Um,
that's incredible.
and there was no wind. And it was interesting. One of my coworkers that I later was working with, and he was a social worker, it flew right over his head. And he noticed he was sitting in traffic and he was on a slight hill and it came from behind him and went over him. And he said he had his windows down and he could hear the next car, their engine, and he was kind of listening to the music that they were playing on the radio and, the crickets chirping and all regular traffic noise. And then all at once, all the sound stopped. And then the craft went right over his head. And he thought it was just, this huge, a cloud. And as it went down, he saw that it was a boomerang shaped craft. He did not see the little flag thing that I saw. But after it went overhead and went down, maybe, I don't know, a few 15, 20 seconds later, then he could hear the car next to him's radio again, and he could hear the crickets again, and he could hear the engines. So it blanked out all the sound for him. So is it that it didn't make sound, or could it, mute sounds and all sounds? So I think that's interesting.
It
What an
is
experience that
almost
is.
like you're in a void. I've heard that before too.
Uh,
That's fascinating.
I didn't hear anything, but that was just me out there. So he had some references before, during, and after for sound. But it changed his life too. It changed everybody's lives. All this stuff does.
I
You see a
mean,
spirit, it changes you.
you've had some incredible stories that you've shared.
Yeah,
And I wanted to ask you, looking back at all of your experiences, what is the message you've taken away?
it's get out of your own way. That's all you got to do. It's simple. Don't make it hard. Religions are based on studying someone else's spiritual experience. Have your own. And I don't want to tell people not to get into religion. And there's some really great things there. But the universe is waiting for you, you know, to shake hands. The light's always on. It's ready for you to step up and come to it. And the more you recognize that and the more you trust and open yourself up to it, the more you're going to have. And I know some people that had an experience or whatever, and it freaked them out and they never had another. It's because they closed the door. Spirit's door is always open. It's 24/7. So, if it's something you really want, just be willing to participate. And again, remove everything that separates you from it. That's all you got to do. And you can do that in a few minutes.
Where can people find you?
I'm on YouTube. I started a cooking channel, but I haven't done a single cooking show yet. So I decided these stories need to come out first. And I'm getting old and my health's changing. So I'm trying to crank out as many videos as I can because I don't want to go to the grave and leave all these wonderful events that I've had just be forgotten if it can help somebody else. So it's Uncle Dave's Kitchen. And someday I'll do a cooking show, but, I'm Uncle Dave, Uncle Dave's Kitchen, and see me on YouTube. I got a couple more, videos coming out real soon.
Well, I look forward to it. Thank you so much, David. I really, really appreciate you, and have an amazing week. And we'll talk soon.
Sure will. Sounds good. Thank you so much, Dave.
Hey, thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to hit the subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss an upload. Your support means the world to me, and I will see you in the next video.